With the recent murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, the parallels between ICE agents and the SS seem to be as blatant as ever. Plainclothes men with hidden identities are marching through the streets to take the lives of anyone who opposed them. It's obvious from the videos of the Renee Good murder that she was intentionally trying to turn her car away from the ICE officials, even backing away from them and waving them past. But the state media apparatus has chosen to paint this mother who had just dropped her kid off at school as a domestic terrorist because one dipshit ICE agent decided to walk in front of a moving vehicle that was intentionally trying to get away from him. Alex Preddy had his phone out and was attempting to help a fellow citizen, and ICE unloaded 9 rounds into him after he had been de-armed. And the vice president got on Twitter to call the execution victim a terrorist. This is a prime example of how the state will paint anyone as a terrorist, even for minor inconveniences such as holding up traffic or filming ICE. It does not matter that you are an American citizen or an undocumented migrant. The same blatant disregard for human rights will be applied to everyone. The institutions that were built to hunt and kidnap undocumented migrants will also be used to murder American citizens. We all have a common interest in preserving human rights because if we allow our government to violate the rights of those who are the least fortunate in our society, they will inevitably violate the rights of everyone else. This basic understanding of maintaining our individual freedoms is lost on Republicans at large, who operate solely on a rules for thee but not for me mindset. Now that political violence is out of the bag, Republicans seem convinced that it will never happen to them. Republicans seem to miss the very obvious conclusion that Renee Good or Alex Preddy could have been literally anyone from any political background. Renee Good could have been the most diehard Trump supporter who took a wrong turn or an anti-Trump protester. It doesn't matter what she believed. She should still be alive today, and those responsible for creating the conditions of her murder should be held responsible, especially the one behind the gun. The main lesson to take away from these recent murders is that ICE can execute anyone they want in the streets and will face zero consequences. Not only will they get away with murder, but then they will go on to disrespect, demean, and tarnish the reputation of those they killed. And that should enrage everyone. Renee Good and Alex Preddy should still be alive today, and if ICE didn't exist, then they would be. ICE created the environment for their murders by rushing law-abiding citizens and ignoring their constitutional rights, yelling contradicting commands and treating them as threats, when one was simply a mom on her way home from dropping her kid off from school, and the other was trying to help someone who got knocked down. Briefly holding up ICE vehicles does not make Renee Good a threat. Backing her car away from the ICE vehicles shows she has zero intention of running over anyone, but one overzealous, trigger-happy lunatic ended her life because he didn't have enough common sense to not walk in front of a moving vehicle. He circled his prey like a vulture and then called his victim a bitch after he executed her.
She was a agitator, probably a paid agitator, but in my opinion, she was an agitator, a very high-level agitator, so professional.
Final words.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you.
Filming ICE and carrying a gun are both constitutionally protected activities, but one trigger-happy lunatic unloaded 9 rounds into Alex when he was already on the ground disarmed. The cost for taking a human life should be unreasonably high for public servants, and public servants should not get the privilege of hiding behind a mask. The Trump administration will never create a lawful society if those enforcing his whims are lawless. ICE currently operates with complete and total immunity from the law, seemingly making up the laws as they go along. Holding up traffic is not a crime punishable by death, but to justify this horrific tragedy, the state decided to smear Renee Good as a treacherous terrorist. This agency, intent on tearing American cities apart, has a lot of similarities with another secret police group, the Gestapo. The secret police of Nazi Germany were created in 1933 to enforce Hitler's new law, the restoration of the professional civil service, an explicitly racist law that banned Jewish people from holding positions as teachers, professors, judges, or within the government. This law targeted Jewish people most of all, but the institutions created to enforce this law would go on to persecute all Germans. Known for holding people without due process, the Gestapo would use the Night and Fog Decree to make those people disappear. The vast network of informants left no street or house uninvaded, even using youth movements to get kids to spy on their own parents. The act of reporting another person's actions to the Gestapo fundamentally changed how Germans behaved in their society, and the Gestapo dominated this new Nazi society through fear and violence as they were given power to circumvent civil liberties. Carrying out atrocities in the name of the Reich deeply changed how German society operated as a whole. While Jewish people were the main target, the Gestapo was also used to target political opponents, dissenters, and anyone from the LGBT community. The ultimate goal goal of the Gestapo was to create an environment of control through fear to align the German population with the goals of the regime. The intended effect was to turn Germany from a democracy into a dictatorship by eroding the public's ability to participate in governance, using fear and intimidation to dissuade the public from taking action against the Nazi government. The stories of Gestapo violence and the paranoia of your own neighbors turning you in created an environment of fear so strong, people began aligning themselves with the regime out of self-preservation. The reputation of the Gestapo pressured Germans into turning on each other, some people even going as far as to make up stories about their neighbors so the Gestapo would make them disappear. The Gestapo proudly made a society where one innocent person would turn in another innocent person just to avoid the leering eye of the Reich. No citizen was safe from the overreach of the secret police. Bert Engelman put it perfectly in his memoirs. The main thing was that each individual knew, or at least suspected, how brutally and ruthlessly the regime dealt with anyone who refused to be brought into line, or disobeyed any of the thousands of regulations and prohibitions. That's how a small minority succeeded in holding the great majority in check. This is the future America is facing right now. A society so paralyzed by fear of those in power that they are unable to stop the coming onslaught of horrific violence. The goal here is to crush dissent in any form, even if it's simply perceived dissent, like in the case of Renee Good. We saw more examples of this in early 2025 when pro-Palestinian activists like Mahmoud Khalil and Ramesa Ozturk were unjustly detained by ICE and smeared by the administration as terrorist sympathizers. Snatching up students with green cards is a perfect mirror of the Gestapo's initial targeting of Jewish students. The goal in both cases is to create a chilling effect on political dissent. If people can't protest, then they can't organize to govern themselves either. The goal here is assimilation, to get those who are not in line to fall in line and behave the way this administration wants us to. The goal is the destruction of our democracy. If we are too afraid to act out against this administration, then Trump and his lackeys can operate with impunity. Trump is obviously making his play for a third term as president, and rolling out stormtroopers to suppress dissent is his first move. If, when he does run for a third term, people begin to protest, then they will be met by the occupational force known as ICE. Seizing Greenland, Iran, and deposing the leader of Venezuela to steal their natural resources may even be requirements that Trump's highest donors asked of him in exchange for backing Trump for a third term, but that is just speculation. The Gestapo of Nazi Germany became a powerful tool that Hitler could use to carry out his will and crush opposition. Trump no doubt intends to use ICE for the same thing. ICE is already making people disappear by sending them to camps with no oversight. One of these facilities that ICE has been shipping people to is i.c.e. The Terrorism Confinement Center is a maximum security prison in El Salvador that the Trump administration has been sending countless individuals under suspicion of being undocumented. The prison, which originally had a capacity of 20,000, has been forced to double its capacity to 40,000, while inmates are denied communication with their relatives and lawyers. The Salvadoran government has described everyone that is held there as terrorists and that they will never leave. It's important to know that El Salvador suspended all constitutional rights to due process in March of 2022 by declaring a national state of emergency. The Salvadoran government has even targeted children, with over 3,300 children being abducted by authorities with no ties to gangs or criminal activity. 66 of these children testified they were subject to torture in the Human Rights Watch report titled "Your Child Does Not Exist Here." And in response to the outcry of children being abducted, the Salvadoran government issued a decree to transfer all child inmates into adult prisons. In one interview with an 18-year-old, he said he was held in a dark cell and beaten every day, and those cells were so crowded, people were forced to sleep while standing up. Since the emergency powers were given to the government in 2022, over 350 people have died in these prisons that we know of. Obviously, I suspect evidence is being covered up and destroyed, and we may never know the real number of people missing or killed. Reports have even confirmed mass graves at the facility. With all of this information being available, it becomes very clear why the Trump administration chose this location to start deporting its victims. There is zero accountability and total compliance with government authority. ICE can effectively make anyone they want disappear using nothing more than suspicion. ICE and the Trump administration is well versed in making up bold-faced lies to support their baseless accusations, while refusing to acknowledge the fact that they are destroying due process with their actions. The current use of this facility mirrors early Nazi policies as well. After all, Auschwitz began as a camp in Poland that Germany would use to hold their undesirables until the final solution began. Auschwitz started out as a prisoner of war camp in 1933, but by 1945 it was an extermination camp to execute those least fortunate under Nazi oppression. We cannot allow history to repeat itself. These systems are being put into place today to inflict the same type of oppression on undocumented migrants and people who do not align with the regime. But it will not only affect those people. These changes to our new society will fuck everyone's life up. Do you want to live in a world where ICE checkpoints check your papers on your daily commute to work? Do you want to live in a world where ICE agents have the power to enter your home and search for undocumented migrants without your consent or a warrant? The way ICE is invading our streets, workplaces, schools, homes, and churches is exactly the same way the Gestapo invaded these spaces in Nazi Germany. ICE is now even arresting journalists, mayors, judges, and congressmen. On Friday, January 30th, 2026, ICE arrested several journalists at the behest of our Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Among them was Don Lemon, who I know as the journalist who embarrassed Elon Musk. I wonder if there's any connection there. Earlier in 2025, plainclothes ICE agents entered and attempted to take over a courtroom while Judge Hannah Dugan was running a session. After informing the agents they needed a warrant to make an arrest in her court, she was arrested and charged with obstruction of justice. This arrest of a judge has absolutely nothing to do with the undocumented immigrant the agents were trying to kidnap, but is instead an escalation on the destructive technique that Republicans are using to weaken the public's ability to govern itself. The intended goal is to align all members in the judiciary branch of government with the goals and aims of the Trump administration. Destruction of due process is the goal, and Democrats seemingly have zero fight in them to combat this. Meanwhile, Republicans understand how to use their power to destroy their opposition and gain more ground politically. Sitting Democrats are digging their own graves by refusing to put out any fight or meaningful messaging against these attacks on our democracy. They have given no reason other than suspicion for their arrests against people like Ramesa Ozturk, and when judges or even mayors simply argue with ICE agents, they are arrested as a fear tactic to dissuade other representatives from ordering ICE to follow the law. This has ultimately led to the Trump administration openly stating that they intend to remove habeas corpus from the Constitution. Habeas corpus is a legal procedure preventing unlawful detention or imprisonment. This means the government cannot deny someone the right to challenge their detention in court. Republicans have tried to mischaracterize undocumented migrants living in America as an invasion, and since that narrative isn't sticking, they've decided to move to remove due process altogether. Overall, I think it is very blatant that ICE is committing the exact crimes and trying to create the same environment of fear and distrust in your fellow Americans that the Gestapo created in Nazi Germany. The government has seemingly successfully polarized people to believe protesters exercising their freedom of speech are somehow in support of terrorism. This propaganda is so prevalent and malicious and aims to create an environment that will turn us against each other and align well-meaning people with the abhorrent goals like the destruction of due process. I believe the ultimate goal of ICE is to strike fear into the population in an attempt to coerce citizens into complying with the Trump administration and align the population with their values. No matter where you are in this country, ICE will be there to remind you what happens when you don't comply with government demands.